In a bustling courtroom on a crisp May morning in 2025, Judge Eleanor Grayson, a stern figure with decades of legal experience, glared down from the bench. Before her stood a young teenager, Ethan Carter, dressed in a simple beige t-shirt, his hands nervously clasped. The case was a minor theft charge, and the judge's patience was wearing thin. "You think you can outsmart me?" she barked, her voice echoing off the wooden panels. The gallery murmured, expecting a typical scolding of a misguided youth. Ethan, however, remained calm, his eyes steady. The judge, known for her sharp wit and no-nonsense demeanor, leaned forward, her silver bun glinting under the chandelier light. She had seen countless defendants, but something about Ethan's quiet confidence intrigued her. The courtroom, adorned with its ornate seal and clock, was filled with lawyers and spectators, all anticipating a swift resolution. Prosecutor Mr. Daniels shuffled his papers, ready to present a routine argument. Yet, Ethan's presence seemed to shift the air. At just 16, he appeared out of place among the suited professionals. Judge Grayson, with her piercing gaze, decided to test him. "Explain yourself, young man," she demanded, tapping her gavel lightly. The audience leaned in, expecting a stammered excuse. Instead, Ethan straightened, his voice clear and composed. "Your Honor, I'd like to request a moment to present my defense," he said, surprising everyone. The judge raised an eyebrow, skeptical but curious. This was no ordinary teenager. Little did she know, Ethan harbored a secret that would turn the courtroom upside down. As the clock ticked toward 5:05 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time, the tension mounted. Ethan's next words would either seal his fate or rewrite the narrative. The judge, accustomed to control, felt an unfamiliar challenge brewing. This case, it seemed, was about to take an extraordinary turn, setting the stage for a revelation that would shock the legal world. Ethan Carter stood tall as the courtroom held its breath, the clock now reading 5:06 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time. Judge Grayson, her skepticism evident, waved a hand, granting him the floor. "Proceed, but I warn you, I've heard every excuse in the book," she said, her tone laced with challenge. Ethan nodded respectfully, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, tattered notebook. The gallery exchanged puzzled glances. What could a teenager possibly have prepared? Ethan cleared his throat, his voice steady and authoritative, a stark contrast to his casual appearance. "Your Honor, I'd like to begin by addressing the inconsistencies in the prosecution's evidence," he stated, flipping open the notebook to a page filled with meticulous notes. The prosecutor, Mr. Daniels, scoffed, adjusting his tie. "This is absurd. He's a child, not a lawyer." But Ethan continued, undeterred. "The security footage presented as evidence lacks a clear timestamp, making it inadmissible under Section 14B of the Evidence Act," he explained, citing the law with precision. The room fell silent. Judge Grayson's eyes narrowed, her mind racing. How did this boy know such legal details? Ethan went on, pointing out discrepancies in the witness statements with a clarity that rivaled seasoned attorneys. Furthermore, the primary witness, Mr. Harper, has a documented history of false testimony, as recorded in Case 2019-342, he added, his voice unwavering. The spectators whispered among themselves, stunned by the teenager's knowledge. Judge Grayson leaned back, her stern facade cracking slightly. She had underestimated him, and now curiosity replaced her initial disdain. Ethan's notebook, filled with handwritten legal arguments, was a testament to his preparation. But the biggest revelation was yet to come. Ethan wasn't just a defendant. He was something far greater, and the courtroom was about to witness his true identity unfold in a way that would leave everyone speechless. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Ethan Carter closed his notebook, his gaze locked with Judge Grayson's. The judge, now visibly intrigued, adjusted her glasses. "Young man, where did you learn such legal expertise?" she asked, her tone softer but still commanding. Ethan took a deep breath, the moment he'd been waiting for finally at hand. "Your Honor, I'm not just a defendant. I am a licensed attorney," he declared, his voice resonating with confidence. Gasps erupted from the gallery. Mr. Daniels dropped his pen, his jaw slack. The judge's gavel hovered mid-air, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. Ethan reached into his backpack, producing a crisp document, his Bar Association certificate, earned at the unprecedented age of 15 through a special prodigy program. "I've been practicing law for a year under a mentorship in New York," he explained, handing the certificate to the bailiff. The document was legitimate, bearing the official seal. Judge Grayson examined it, her mind reeling. A 16-year-old attorney? It was unheard of. Ethan continued, "I disguised myself as a typical teenager to expose flaws in the system, biases that lead to unfair judgments based on appearance." The courtroom fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. The spectators, once dismissive, now watched in awe. Ethan's revelation wasn't just a personal triumph, it was a critique of the justice system itself. Judge Grayson, for the first time in years, felt a pang of humility. "You've made your point," she admitted, her voice steady but reflective. Ethan's gamble had paid off, but the case wasn't over. His next challenge was to defend himself against the theft charge, using his genius to turn the tables on the prosecution in a way no one could have predicted. At 5:08 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time on May 28, 2025, the courtroom atmosphere shifted as Ethan Carter, now revealed as a prodigy attorney, prepared to dismantle the theft charge. Judge Grayson, regaining her composure, nodded for him to continue. "Proceed, counselor," she said, her voice carrying a newfound respect. Ethan turned to the prosecutor, Mr. Daniels, who was still visibly flustered by the revelation. "Your Honor, I'd like to call the prosecution's key witness, Mr. Harper, to the stand for cross-examination," Ethan requested, his tone professional yet assertive. The judge granted the motion, and Mr. Harper, a wiry man in his 40s, took the stand, shifting uncomfortably under Ethan's steady gaze. Ethan began his questioning with surgical precision. "Mr. Harper, you testified that you saw me steal the item at 3 p.m. on April 15. Can you confirm the lighting conditions in the store at that time?" he asked. Harper hesitated, mumbling, "It was dim, I think." Ethan seized the opportunity. "Dim? Yet your statement claims you saw my face clearly from 20 feet away. Isn't that inconsistent?" The witness stammered, unable to respond. Ethan then presented a photo of the store's layout, obtained legally during discovery, showing a pillar obstructing Harper's alleged line of sight. "Your Honor, this evidence proves Mr. Harper couldn't have seen me as claimed," Ethan stated, his voice unwavering. The gallery buzzed, and Mr. Daniels' confidence crumbled. Judge Grayson leaned forward, her interest piqued. Ethan's argument was airtight, exposing the witness's unreliable testimony. Furthermore, Ethan continued, "I have an alibi, surveillance footage from a library across town, time-stamped at 3:02 p.m., showing me studying." He submitted the footage, which the bailiff verified. The prosecution's case was unraveling fast, and Ethan's strategic brilliance was on full display. The judge's earlier mockery now seemed a distant memory as Ethan turned the trial into a masterclass of legal defense. The courtroom tension peaked as Ethan Carter's defense gained momentum. Judge Grayson, now fully engaged, turned to the prosecution. "Mr. Daniels, your response," she prompted, her tone expectant. The prosecutor, visibly shaken by Ethan's airtight alibi and discredited witness, stood up, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his tie. "Your Honor, the defense's claims are speculative," he began, his voice lacking conviction. He scrambled to salvage the case, pointing to a secondary piece of evidence, a grainy still from a nearby ATM camera allegedly showing Ethan at the crime scene. "This image places the defendant at the location," Daniels insisted, projecting the blurry photo onto the courtroom screen. Ethan, unfazed, rose to counter. "Your Honor, I object. This image is inadmissible due to its poor quality and lack of authentication," he argued, citing legal precedent from a 2023 case on digital evidence standards. He approached the screen, pointing out the pixelated figure. "The individual in this photo is wearing a hoodie. I don't own one, and the library footage I submitted shows me in a t-shirt at the same time." The gallery murmured, impressed by Ethan's attention to detail. Judge Grayson examined the image, her expression unreadable. Sustained, she ruled, striking the evidence. Daniel's face reddened, his case now hanging by a thread. Ethan pressed his advantage. Additionally, I'd like to submit a character witness statement from my mentor, attorney Laura Bennett, who can confirm my whereabouts and integrity, he said, handing over a notarized document. The statement detailed Ethan's dedication to justice, further solidifying his credibility. The prosecution's narrative was collapsing, and Daniels knew it. As the clock ticked on, Ethan's genius shone brighter, leaving the courtroom in awe. The trial was nearing its climax, with the judge's final ruling now the only thing standing between Ethan and vindication. That the courtroom sat in a hushed silence as Judge Eleanor Grayson prepared to address the unfolding trial. Ethan Carter's relentless defense had dismantled the prosecution's case, leaving Mr. Daniels defeated at his table. The judge, her stern demeanor softened by the day's events, took a moment to reflect. She had entered the trial with a preconceived notion of Ethan, assuming he was just another troubled teen. Now, she saw her mistake clearly. "Counselor Carter," she began, her voice steady but tinged with humility, "you've presented a compelling defense, one that challenges not only this case but the biases we all carry." The gallery listened intently, sensing a shift in the judge's perspective. Judge Grayson glanced at the ornate seal above her, a symbol of justice she'd sworn to uphold. Ethan's revelation as a prodigy attorney had exposed flaws in the system she'd served for decades. She recalled her earlier mockery, "You think you can outsmart me?" and felt a pang of regret. Ethan's actions weren't just a defense, they were a lesson. "Your evidence, including the library footage and character statement, is admissible and persuasive," she continued, her gaze returning to Ethan. "The prosecution has failed to meet the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt." Mr. Daniels slumped in his chair, knowing the case was lost. The spectators, a mix of lawyers and curious onlookers, exchanged nods of approval. Ethan stood tall, his expression a blend of relief and determination. Judge Grayson tapped her gavel lightly, a signal the trial was nearing its end. "Before I deliver my verdict, I must commend your bravery, young man," she added, her words carrying weight. The courtroom awaited her final decision, knowing this case would be remembered as a turning point, a moment where a teenager redefined justice. The courtroom held its breath as Judge Eleanor Grayson prepared to deliver her verdict. The ornate clock ticked softly, marking the historic moment. Ethan Carter stood poised, his beige t-shirt a stark contrast to the formal robes and suits around him. Judge Grayson, her silver bun catching the light, straightened in her chair. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, she began, her voice resonating with authority, "I find the defendant, Ethan Carter, not guilty of the theft charge." A collective sigh of relief swept through the gallery, followed by a burst of applause. Mr. Daniels lowered his head, conceding defeat. The judge raised a hand to silence the room. "However, this case transcends a simple ruling," she continued. "Ethan's demonstration of legal acumen at such a young age highlights the need for reform in how we perceive and treat defendants. His disguise as a typical teenager exposed systemic biases that must be addressed." She paused, her gaze settling on Ethan with a mix of admiration and introspection. "I apologize for my initial skepticism. You've proven yourself a genius attorney and a catalyst for change." The words carried a weight that echoed beyond the courtroom walls. Ethan nodded respectfully, his expression humble yet resolute. News of the verdict spread quickly, with reporters outside scrambling to file stories. The case would dominate headlines, sparking debates on juvenile justice and prodigy recognition. Judge Grayson dismissed the session, tapping her gavel with a finality that marked the end of the trial but the beginning of a larger conversation. As Ethan stepped down, he knew his victory was more than personal, it was a call to reshape the legal world. The courtroom emptied, leaving behind a legacy that would inspire generations to come. The courtroom doors swung open, and Ethan Carter stepped into a frenzy of flashing cameras and eager reporters. The not guilty verdict had just been delivered, but Ethan's mission was far from over. Dressed in his simple beige t-shirt, he faced the crowd with a quiet determination. A reporter from a leading news outlet thrust a microphone forward. "Ethan, you've exposed biases in the justice system, what's next?" she asked. Ethan paused, his mind already racing with ideas. "I want to advocate for systemic change," he replied, his voice clear. "No one should be judged by their appearance or age before their case is heard." Inside, Judge Grayson watched from her chambers, the trial replaying in her mind. Ethan's words had struck a chord, prompting her to consider mentorship programs for young legal minds. Meanwhile, Ethan outlined his plans to the press. "I'm starting an initiative to educate underprivileged youth about their legal rights," he announced, his passion evident. "Too many are unfairly targeted due to bias." The reporters scribbled furiously, knowing this story would resonate far beyond the courthouse steps. Ethan's initiative, later named Justice for All, aimed to provide free legal workshops in marginalized communities, ensuring access to knowledge and representation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, Ethan's victory became a beacon of hope. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #EthanCarter and #JusticeReform, amplifying his message globally. Back in the courtroom, the janitor swept the floor, unaware that the space had just birthed a movement. Ethan's journey as a prodigy attorney had only begun, but his impact was already undeniable. The legal world would never be the same, thanks to a teenager who dared to challenge the status quo. Ethan Carter's press conference outside the courtroom drew a growing crowd. The city buzzed with his name, and the #EthanCarter trended worldwide. Dressed in his unassuming beige t-shirt, Ethan stood tall, addressing a sea of microphones and cameras. "Today's verdict is a start, not an end," he declared, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "I'll work with lawmakers to draft legislation ensuring fair trials for all, regardless of age or background." The crowd erupted in applause, inspired by the 16-year-old's vision. His Justice for All initiative gained immediate traction, with volunteers signing up online within minutes. Inside the courthouse, Judge Eleanor Grayson reviewed Ethan's case notes, impressed by his meticulous preparation. She contacted her judicial network, proposing a task force to study juvenile legal rights, a direct result of Ethan's influence. Meanwhile, Ethan met with a local law firm offering pro bono support for his initiative. "We need to train the next generation of advocates," he told them, his eyes alight with purpose. The firm agreed, promising resources to launch workshops by summer's end. Social media amplified his message, with influencers and legal experts praising his brilliance. As dusk settled over the city at 5:14 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time, Ethan's story captivated the nation. A documentary crew approached him, eager to chronicle his journey from courtroom defendant to legal reformer. "I'm just a kid with a dream," he said modestly, yet his actions spoke volumes. The legal community began recognizing him as an icon, a prodigy reshaping justice. His next step was to testify before a congressional committee, a daunting prospect for most, but for Ethan, it was another opportunity to fight for fairness. The world watched, knowing a new era of advocacy had begun. Ethan Carter stood on the steps of the courthouse, the golden hues of sunset framing his silhouette. The day had transformed him from a mock teenager into a legal luminary, and the weight of his newfound legacy settled on his shoulders. The press conference had ended, but the impact lingered. "Justice isn't just a courtroom ruling, it's a promise we must keep," he told the last lingering reporters, his voice carrying a maturity beyond his 16 years. His Justice for All initiative had already secured funding from philanthropists moved by his story, with the first workshop scheduled for June. Inside, Judge Eleanor Grayson finalized a letter to the Judicial Council, proposing Ethan's case as a case study for training judges on unconscious bias. She smiled faintly, proud of the role she played in his rise, despite her initial skepticism. Ethan's journey had sparked a movement, with legal firms across the country offering internships to young talents inspired by him. As he walked away, a crowd of supporters cheered, their signs reading "Ethan for Justice." His testimony before Congress, set for next month, loomed large, but he felt ready to advocate for systemic reform on a national stage. At 5:16 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time, Ethan paused to look back at the courthouse, the ornate seal a reminder of where it all began. His beige t-shirt, once a symbol of his disguise, now represented resilience. The world had changed that day, and Ethan knew his work was just beginning. Future generations would study his trial as a turning point in legal history, a testament to a genius attorney who defied odds. With a determined nod, he stepped into the night, ready to forge a legacy that would echo for decades.